stepping past the May contract expiry itself, Lord Browne, first of all, we're down 70% or so for oil prices year to date. Whether you're looking at Brent or WTI, we're at or around $20 a barrel. Does that level, all things considered, make sense to you? And could it persist for a very long time?
Well, it does, obviously, because there's too much supply and too little demand. And what is left over has to go into inventory. And space for inventory is highly limited, very limited indeed. It will fill up completely very soon. So in those circumstances, we need to cut production. OPEC Plus has agreed to do that starting on May the 1st, and it hasn't happened yet. So that'll be around 10 million barrels a day. And I would expect the natural forces of economics, quite simply, it costs more to produce oil than you can get for it, will continue to reduce production. But there's still a big supply imbalance. So right now, demand is down around 30%, and that's 30 million barrels a day. So we have a long way to go to get the market into balance. It reminds me very much of what happened in 85 and 86 in the reverse, when Saudi Arabia was put in a corner, its production was cut, and then it decided to open the taps. It demonstrated that supply is never a problem, demand is. And as a result, oil prices stayed low for 17 years or so.
You mentioned Saudi Arabia there, Lord Browne, and Russia, of course, is being mentioned a lot as well. Do you think those two countries are celebrating where we are at the moment, or are they feeling the pain as well?
Well, I think it's a bittersweet victory for them. I think that they were determined, of course, to create some ascendancy in the market, being two big, effectively state producers. And they saw coming on the horizon for some time now the United States as the third very big producer, which is not state-controlled, which simply responds to the market. It's absolutely a perfect market. So when prices justify, people produce oil. When they don't, they stop producing. So I think you'll see
Lord
this.
Browne.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I say I think the oil has a tendency always to be an oversupply. The real question is, how long does it take to clear? Right now, we've got huge inventories, far too much supply, and demand, which is pretty sluggish. And I think given the way in which we come out of, and it's too early to tell, we're still well into it, into the recession/depression as a result of coronavirus, this will take time. And there will be a long time before stocks get to normal levels and demand gets to normal levels, whatever that means.
I just wanted to ask about the U.S. I mean, we were supposed to be, I think, energy dominant was President Trump's expression, energy independent, the world's biggest producer. After this slide we've seen, how do you think about the damage it's going to be done on U.S. production and companies and jobs and the entire energy industry here?
Well, I think what I say will apply actually to the world as well, but in particular to the US. I think for a very long time, the oil and gas industry in particular has produced very poor returns for investors. And certain of the independents in the US have never, ever produced free cash flow. So they've always needed more money to grow. I think investors have seen too much of that and say, we hear the promises, but now let's have something real. So getting the capital to support many of these companies will be very difficult. And indeed, today, the oil and gas sector in the stock market is down to 3 to 4%. It used to be 15%. I think people have voted with their feet, and I think they see oil not only having a supply-demand problem just on the basis of today, but a longer-term problem. First, energy use becomes more and more efficient over time. Roughly 1.5% drop per unit of GDP every year for the last 30 years. So that makes a dent. And secondly, hydrocarbons in certain parts of the world, a lot of parts of the world, are not very in vogue. People do not like the idea of producing carbon dioxide and methane and putting it into the atmosphere. It's global warming. And people concerned about that. They're particularly concerned, I think, as a result of if you mess with nature, perhaps is what we're seeing with the virus. People have to think twice about whether we are doing the right thing. And these big forces we unleash when we deal with nature need to be thought through very, very carefully. So I think this will probably dent overall supply, overall demand, excuse me, for the long term.
Lord Browne, that said, within the industry, is there an opportunity for the big players, the majors with strong balance sheets? It was interesting to see earlier this week, despite oil hitting record all-time lows, that a lot of the stronger energy companies didn't decline to the same extent. If I look at just BP, your old company, it's still up about 35% from its low on the 19th of March. Do you think, getting through the short-term volatility, that companies like BP will benefit if smaller players go out of business?
So I think the bigger companies generally have better diversified portfolios. They're not just producing oil and gas, they're selling it, they're refining it, they're doing petrochemicals, a lot of other things. So that hedges them a bit against the decline of oil and gas prices. But there is no doubt that, oil doesn't go away when a company is in distress. It simply gets to be put in the hands of somebody else. And so, balance sheets are restructured, companies are restructured. It's happened periodically, probably every decade or so, in the energy industry. I certainly was part of that when I built BP into a super major in the 90s as a result of years of very low prices, leading to people saying it's time to come together to reduce overall costs and become more diversified and stronger. So I think that will continue again and again. And I think there probably are pretty good prices available in the market. I see that some deals which in earlier this year were, let's say, at $900 are now $500. One recently done with Total, for example.
Lord Browne, thanks so much for joining us. Always a pleasure.
A great pleasure.